finding God in all things. I'd like to tell you something about that. I'm now at the end of an adventurous life, and I can tell you that I find God whenever I want to find him. How did it happen? Do you see this young man? A real macho Spaniard. That's me. My story begins when I almost lost my legs. To my own amazement, there on the battlefield, my adventure with Jesus began. I was on my back for a year, at first with just one thing on my mind: to restart my life as a knight as soon as possible, until I slowly discovered that God had other things in store for me. I daydreamed a lot in those days. What else was there to do? About a prominent woman, and how I would win her affection through my heroic deeds. What I wanted was a few novels about chivalry to read. But what I got was a book about the life of Jesus, and a collection of stories about saints, people who followed Jesus in a special way. It surprised me that I started dreaming about these stories too. Then I imagined how I would perform the same great deeds as the saints, and that I would do even more for God than all these men and women put together. In all this fantasizing, I made a remarkable discovery. Each time I thought about my life of excess as a knight, I felt energized at first, but then I became lethargic and tired. However, when I thought of the great heroic deeds I would accomplish for God, I felt just as excited, but I remained energized afterwards and experienced deep joy, a striking difference. It turned out to be a key guide for finding God in everyday life. My desire to dedicate my life radically to God grew ever stronger. For me, that meant leaving behind the life of a knight. I decided to go to Jerusalem as a pilgrim because I wanted to be in the places where my new friend Jesus had been. This thought filled me with joy, which for me was a sign that I was on the right path. When I was still just at the start of my journey, I got into an argument with a Muslim man. I found what he said about Mary, the mother of Jesus, offensive, and it really got under my skin. He went on ahead, and I began to question myself. I believed he had insulted Mary. Shouldn't I attack him with my dagger? I would certainly have done it before, but maybe it didn't fit with this new life. I didn't know. I decided to give my donkey free rein so that it could decide. In this way, and to my own surprise, I discovered that I could entrust myself to the will of someone outside myself. I'm not alone in this. Later, when I knew better who God is and how to find him, I wouldn't let a donkey decide, but God himself. I travelled on to the Spanish town of Manresa, where I had many new insights. In my heart, I was still a bit of a player who wanted to woo God the way I had secured the affections of women. If a saint had kneeled for 5 hours, then I prayed for 7. Another time, I decided not to eat or drink for a week. I blindly followed the example of all the saints at the same time, and it made me very unhappy. It made me so desperate that I even considered ending my life. This is not what was meant to happen. Clearly living like this was not what God was asking me to do. From this, I realized that God was inviting me to look for him in my own personal way. It was as if my eyes were slowly opening. Bit by bit, I discovered how I could find God by listening to my deepest feelings. In this, my friendship with Jesus was a great help. I worked at it every day, praying with the stories of Jesus' life. I paid close attention to what was going on in my heart. What is he inviting me to do? In this way, I learned to discern how I could better direct my life and come to find God more easily. A year later, I made the crossing to Jerusalem by ship. Finally. Again and again, I visited the places Jesus had been. What more could I want? Standing on the ground where my friend Jesus had stood, breathing the air that he breathed. Before the journey home, I went to the Mount of Olives one more time. This is the place where Jesus ascended to heaven. Because it was forbidden to go there without a guide, I had to bribe the guard. I wanted to pray at the place where Jesus had stood for the last time. When I realized that I didn't know which direction Jesus was facing at his ascension, I went back. I wanted to know even the smallest details about Jesus. It was now clear to me that everything, absolutely everything, is centered on him. As I was being led through the city like a criminal, my heart was filled with joy, and I felt Jesus close by. Back in Europe, I began to study. I had come to realize that you must use not only your heart to find God, but also your head. In Paris, I became friends with 6 fellow students with whom later I would found the Jesuit order. With them, I made another discovery. You can find God by devoting yourself to others. More than that, you can find him in all things. We cared for the poor and helped others to find God in their everyday lives. It's hard to believe what that cannonball set in motion. A tough guy who founded a religious order. What a conversion. And yet, this is not offered as something exceptional. Absolutely not. You too can learn to discern God's voice in the feelings and longings already present in your life. In this way, God invites you to a life of great joy and deep love for yourself and for those around you. It's up to you to choose to make your decisions on this basis. There are many ways to find God. Find him among young people hoping for a meaningful future. Listen to the earth that groans and longs for healing. See the countless poor, refugees, and outcasts yearning for justice. God invites you also to seek him and find him in all things. What conversion, what change of direction is he calling you to?